It was a cold evening. The wind blew hard, and the city streets were nearly empty. Most people had gone home. Shops were closing, and the smell of roasted chestnuts from a nearby cart was fading. But one teenage boy stood near the back of a closed diner, holding his thin jacket tightly around him. He had no home to go to, no family to call. Just himself and the cold night. He was used to this. Sleeping in corners, finding warm spots near heating vents, sometimes sharing leftovers behind small restaurants. It wasn't a good life, but it was the only life he knew. He had learned to stay out of trouble, avoid loud crowds, and never ask for too much. People often looked away when they saw him, as if he didn't matter. But he kept going. Quiet, tired, but still hopeful that maybe something better would come one day. As he stood near the edge of a quiet plaza, he heard a soft voice. "Hello. Can someone help me? The voice was small and scared. He looked around. It was coming from near a bench by the corner lamppost. At first, he thought it might be someone playing a joke. But then he saw her, a young girl, not older than 10, stood near the bench. She was wearing a coat, but she looked unsure of where she was. Her hands were out in front of her, searching. Her head was turning slightly, as if she couldn't see what was around her. "Hello?" she said again. "I can't find my driver. The teen took a careful step forward. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl turned her head in his direction. "I'm lost," she whispered. "I'm blind. I was waiting for someone to pick me up. But now I don't know where I am." He didn't know what to say. His heart beat a little faster. He had helped people before, shared food, given directions. But this was different. She was just a child, alone in the cold, and couldn't see anything. He walked closer. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "I can help. If you want." She reached out one hand. "Please don't leave me here," she said, her voice shaking. He took her hand gently and gave it a small squeeze. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood for a moment. He looked around, hoping maybe someone was looking for her. But the streets were empty, just wind and silence. "What's your name?" he asked. She told him. "And you?" He gave his first name quietly. It felt strange saying it out loud. Not many people asked him that. She told him she had gotten out of a car to stretch her legs. Her driver had gone to get something from a shop. But when she turned around, she couldn't hear him anymore. She waited, but he never came back. Maybe he went to the wrong place. Maybe he forgot she couldn't see. She didn't have her phone. And she didn't know the street name. The boy looked around again. "Do you remember anything about your home?" he asked. "A building? A park? A store nearby?" She thought for a moment. "It has a big gate and trees. And the sound of a fountain. I remember the sound." That didn't help much. This was a city. Lots of places had gates and fountains. But he couldn't leave her. Not like this. "I'll walk with you," he said. "Maybe you'll remember something if we go around." "Okay," she said, holding his hand tighter. They started walking slowly. Her steps were careful. He watched the sidewalk for cracks and holes so she wouldn't trip. When she stumbled a little, he steadied her. She didn't complain. She was braver than she looked. "Do you live nearby?" she asked after a while. He paused. "Not really. I just stay around." "You mean you don't have a house?" "No," he said. "Not right now." She was quiet. Then she said, "But you're still helping me." He smiled a little. Of course. That's what people should do, right?" She nodded and held onto his arm. The night got colder, and her hands were shaking. He noticed it and took off his thin jacket. "Here," he said. "You need this more than me." "But won't you be cold?" He nodded. "Probably. But I'm used to it." She didn't argue. She put it on and whispered, "Thank you." They kept walking for another hour. She kept describing little things she remembered the sound of. Birds in the morning, the smell of flowers near her home, the feeling of soft carpet near the door. He listened closely, trying to picture where that could be. Finally, she said, "I think I know this street." He looked up. There was a wide road ahead, and at the end stood tall gates. Behind them, large trees and a stone fountain. A light glowed from a big house in the distance. "Is this it?" he asked. She nodded quickly. "Yes, this is it." He looked at the gate, unsure of what would happen next. But he walked with her to the front, still holding her hand. He had brought her home, but had no idea how much this moment was about to change both their lives forever. The tall iron gate stood in front of them like a wall. Bright lights from inside the large house shone through the trees. The girl smiled for the first time, holding the teen's hand tighter. "This is home," she whispered with relief. He stared at the house quietly. It looked more like a mansion, with big windows, statues in the garden, and a driveway wider than any street he had walked. He had never been this close to a house so grand. Before he could say anything, a guard stepped out from a small security booth near the gate. The guard looked confused at first, then suspicious. He walked toward them quickly. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked sharply. "Yes," she said. "This boy helped me get home." The guard looked at the teen, then at the girl. "Where's your driver?" "I don't know. He didn't come back." The guard narrowed his eyes at the boy. "And who are you?" The teen stepped back a little. "I just found her near the plaza. She said she was lost." "She's blind," the girl added. "He helped me the whole way." Still, the guard didn't seem convinced. "Wait here." He picked up his walkie-talkie and called someone from the house. The teen looked down, feeling uncomfortable. He didn't want to cause trouble. Maybe he should leave now. He was just a homeless kid after all. People didn't trust kids like him, but before he could take a step back, the girl grabbed his hand again. "Don't go," she said. "You stayed with me this long." He looked at her and nodded. Within moments, the front door of the mansion opened, and a woman in a long coat came running out. Her hair was loose, and her eyes were full of worry. "My baby!" she cried, rushing to the girl. The girl smiled as her mother hugged her tight. "I was so scared," she said softly. "But he helped me." The woman looked at the teen, tears still in her eyes. "You found her?" He nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. The woman turned and called toward the house. "Call him, tell him she's safe." Soon, another figure came walking briskly from the front steps. A man in a dark coat, with silver hair and a strong face, rushed toward them. He looked serious but relieved. He knelt beside his daughter. "Are you hurt?" "No, Daddy," she said. "He helped me. He stayed with me the whole time." The man turned toward the teen. His eyes scanned him, his worn-out shoes, dirty jeans, the thin shirt without a jacket. His face softened. "You walked her all the way here?" The teen nodded. "She didn't know the street. We just kept going till she recognized something." "You gave her your jacket?" "She was cold." There was a long pause. The father stood up. "What's your name, son?" The teen looked down. "Just me. I don't want any trouble." The girl tugged on her dad's coat. "He doesn't have a home," she said quietly. "Can he stay here tonight?" The man and woman exchanged a glance. The guard looked uncomfortable. The mother turned to the teen. "Would you like to come inside? Have a warm meal?" He hesitated. This wasn't his world. He wasn't used to kindness. But the girl was still holding his hand, and her eyes, though she couldn't see, seemed to glow with trust. "Just for the night," he said softly. "Of course," the mother smiled. "Just for the night." They led him through the gate. The guards opened it slowly, watching him closely, but no longer with suspicion. The stone path felt strange under his feet. Too clean. Too perfect. Inside the house, everything was warm and bright. The smell of fresh food made his stomach turn with hunger. A maid brought a blanket. Another staff member brought a bowl of soup. "Sit," the woman said gently. He sat at the edge of a soft couch, unsure if it was okay to touch anything. The girl sat beside him. "I never thought someone like you would help someone like me," she said. He looked at her. "Why not? People with nothing, they still give. That's special." He didn't know how to reply. The man returned after a phone call. "We just found out her driver had a health emergency and was taken to the hospital. He's okay now, but he couldn't return." "Oh," the girl said. "Then it's a good thing he found me." The man looked at the teen again. "You did something that no one else did tonight. You stayed. You helped." The teen shook his head. "Anyone would have done it." "No," the man said calmly. "Most would have walked away." The girl leaned against the teen's shoulder. "I didn't want him to leave me. He made me feel safe." The parents looked at each other again. The father's expression had changed. The walls around his heart were starting to lower. Outside, the night was still cold. But inside the mansion, a quiet warmth filled the room, not just from the heat, but from something deeper. A bond had been formed, and the boy, who had slept on cold concrete just last night, didn't know his whole world was beginning to shift. The teen sat quietly in the large living room, still unsure if he truly belonged there. He had never seen such a place before. Soft carpets that felt like clouds, walls filled with paintings, lights that gave off a warm glow instead of buzzing, like the street lamps he was used to. Everything around him looked expensive, untouchable, but what felt even stranger was how kind the girl's parents had been to him so far. No one had shouted. No one had looked at him with fear or disgust. They had offered food, warmth, and now the girl wouldn't stop smiling at him. She had taken a seat right next to him, her hand resting on his arm as if he was her big brother. Though she couldn't see him, it was like she knew he needed to feel seen too. The girl's father returned to the room, his face calm but thoughtful. "Your name," he said again. "You never told us." The teen hesitated, then quietly spoke. "I'm called Eli." The man nodded slowly. "Eli, that's a good name. I'm thankful for what you did tonight." Eli lowered his eyes. "I didn't do anything special. You kept her safe. In this world, that's rare," the man said firmly. The girl, still holding on to Eli, spoke softly. "Can Eli stay here tonight, Daddy? In one of the rooms upstairs?" The father didn't answer right away. He looked over at his wife. She gave a small nod. "Yes," he said. "He can stay." Eli looked up surprised. "You don't have to do that. I can sleep outside again. I've done it a lot." "You've done it enough," the mother said kindly. "Tonight, you rest properly." A maid came in to guide him to a guest room. Eli followed her slowly, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure if this was a dream, some trick. But when he stepped into the room, he almost gasped. The bed was huge, clean, and warm. There was a soft robe hanging on the door and clean towels folded on the bed. A bathroom of his own. A heater humming softly. He hadn't had any of this in years. He touched the blanket gently, as if it might disappear. Then, after a long moment, he sat on the bed and let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Downstairs, the father picked up his phone and made a call. "I want full background checks," he said to someone on the line. "No police involved. Quiet and quick. I just want to know who this boy is and where he came from." His wife gave him a look. "He saved our daughter. He deserves trust." "I agree," the father replied. "But I still need to protect our family." Meanwhile, Eli stood at the window, looking out at the garden below. He could see the moonlight hitting the fountain. The same fountain the girl had described while they were walking. It was real. This place was real. He was really here. His stomach was full, and for the first time in many nights, his body felt warm. But his mind still held shadows. What if they didn't want him here tomorrow? What if they found out something about him that made them change their minds? He had no family, no papers, no real home. If they asked questions, what would he say? The next morning, the girl woke early and asked to see Eli again. She said she wanted to thank him properly and have breakfast together. When Eli entered the dining room, freshly showered and dressed in borrowed clothes, he looked almost like a different boy. His hair was still damp, and his eyes were unsure, but cleaner, softer. The girl clapped her hands with joy when she heard him come in. "You're here," he smiled. "Told you I wouldn't leave." They sat together. A long table full of warm food waited for them: pancakes, fruits, eggs, and fresh juice. Eli had never seen such breakfast in his life. He only took a little at first, afraid to seem greedy, but the girl's mother noticed and gently placed more food on his plate. "Eat, sweetheart. You've had too many hard days." He nodded and whispered, "Thank you." During breakfast, the girl kept talking about the night before, how Eli had carried her when she got tired, how he kept her warm, how he never let go of her hand. "He was my eyes," she said. "I wasn't scared when he was with me." The father listened silently. He was still cautious, but something in his heart was softening. His daughter had trusted this boy without question. Maybe it was time he did too. Suddenly, a house staff member came in and whispered something to the father. He got up and walked out of the room quietly. A few minutes later he returned, his face thoughtful. He looked at Eli. "Can we talk later? Just you and me?" Eli nodded nervously. "Okay." The girl smiled at him. "Don't worry. Daddy just wants to know your story." Eli's hands trembled slightly. He had a story, a long one, a painful one. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to share it. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to be the end of something, but the beginning. Later that afternoon, Eli sat across from the girl's father in a small office with tall shelves full of books and pictures. The room was quiet, except for the soft ticking of a clock on the wall. Eli sat straight, hands in his lap, trying not to fidget. He felt out of place again, even though the house had been kind to him. The man looked at Eli not with anger, but with a firm kind of curiosity. "I had someone look into your background," he said carefully, "only to make sure you weren't in trouble or danger." Eli nodded slowly. He had expected this. The man leaned forward. "You don't have any family records? No school history after a certain point? Do you want to tell me what happened?" Eli lowered his eyes. His voice came out quiet. "My mom passed away when I was 10. It was sudden. Heart problem. I don't know my dad. After that, I was moved to different homes. Foster homes. Some were okay. Some weren't. I ran away 2 years ago. Been on the streets since." The man didn't interrupt. He just listened. "I didn't steal. I didn't fight anyone. I just kept moving around, finding food, finding places to sleep. I didn't want to be locked in anymore." There was a long pause. "I didn't help your daughter because I wanted anything," Eli added. "I didn't even know who she was." "I believe you," the man said. Eli looked up in surprise. "I've met enough people in my life to know when someone's pretending. You're not, and my daughter trusts you. That means something." Eli let out a breath he'd been holding for days. "Do you want to go back to school?" the man asked. "Have a chance to live like a normal teenager?" Eli's voice cracked. "I don't even know how to start." "We'll help," the man said simply, "if you're willing." Eli couldn't speak. He just nodded. That evening, things began to change in ways Eli had never expected. The story of the girl and the homeless teen had already started spreading online. A photo taken by one of the staff members of the girl holding Eli's hand at the gate had been shared on social media. The caption read, "He brought her home when no one else did." By the next morning, the story had gone viral. Thousands of people shared the post. News channels picked it up. Headlines read, "Homeless teen saves blind billionaire's daughter." Stranger becomes hero in quiet act of kindness. Reporters called the house. Journalists stood outside the gates. Cameras flashed, and the phones didn't stop ringing. Eli was overwhelmed. He didn't want fame. He didn't want attention. He just wanted peace. But now the world knew his face. The girl's parents kept the media away from him. He's just a boy, they told the press. Let him be one. But inside the house, things felt different. Eli wasn't a guest anymore. He was slowly becoming something else, something more. The girl asked him to read books with her, to sit beside her during meals, and to walk with her in the garden. She always held his hand and smiled when he spoke. One afternoon, while sitting under a large tree in the backyard, she asked, "Do you ever miss your mom?" Eli nodded. "Every day. I miss my grandma," she said softly. "She used to tell me stories before I went blind." Eli looked at her. "Were you born blind?" She shook her head. "It happened when I got sick at 5. A fever. It took my sight, but not my memories." There was silence for a moment. "I'm glad you remember the good things," he said. She smiled. "You're one of them now." Eli felt something shift in his chest. He didn't know what it was, but it warmed him. That weekend, the girl's father held a small press conference. Only a few trusted media outlets were allowed. Eli stood in the background, unsure if he wanted to be seen. The father stood in front of the camera, holding a microphone. "My daughter was lost in the city. Most people passed her by, but one boy didn't. He had no home, no money, but he had something greater heart." He looked directly at the cameras. "This young man reminded us all what humanity should look like. He didn't know who she was. He didn't ask for anything. But he gave everything." Eli listened with wide eyes. No one had ever spoken about him like that before. After the speech, the man walked back and placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "I want the world to know who you are," he said. "Not for attention, but so they remember what kindness looks like." Eli blinked back tears. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was starting to feel like home. A week had passed since Eli helped the girl find her way home. But for him, it felt like a lifetime. Each day inside the big house felt like something out of a dream. Warm food, soft clothes, real conversations, and something even more rare, people who looked at him with kindness instead of fear. He still wasn't sure what to call it. Was it luck? Was it a second chance? All he knew was that everything had changed because he stopped to help someone who needed it. One morning, the girl knocked on his door. "You're awake?" she asked with a smile. He opened the door, fully dressed. "I've been up for a while," she grinned. "Come on. There's something waiting downstairs." Eli followed her carefully down the hall, still nervous to walk over rugs that probably cost more than anything he ever owned. When they reached the living room, he saw her parents standing by the couch. Next to them was a man in a suit holding a folder. "Eli," the girl's father said, "we've made some arrangements." Eli stood still. "What kind of arrangements?" "We'd like to offer you something more permanent," he said. "Not just a bed, not just a room, but a place in this family." Eli's heart thumped hard. "You mean?" "We've filed to become your legal guardians," the man continued. "Only if you want that, of course." Eli looked down at his hands. They were shaking. "I never thought anyone would ever want me like that," he whispered. The girl walked over and grabbed his arm. "We already do." He tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat felt tight, and his eyes burned with tears he didn't want to show. But when he looked up and saw how sincere they all were, how no one was pretending, it broke through everything he'd built around his heart. "I'd like that," he said finally. "I'd really like that." The woman stepped forward and hugged him. "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're part of this family." That night, Eli sat outside in the garden, watching the stars. He hadn't done that in years. On the streets, nights were about survival, finding a spot where he wouldn't be seen. trying to stay warm. But now he could just sit and breathe. Girl joined him on the bench. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we didn't meet?" She asked. "All the time," he replied. "I would have stayed scared. And maybe lost for longer," she said. "I probably would have." Kept walking. "Never knowing something good was waiting around the corner," he added. She smiled. "Funny how life works." He nodded. "Yeah." They sat quietly for a few minutes. "I've been thinking," she said. "You were my eyes that night. You showed me a way home when I couldn't see. And you gave me a home when I didn't have one," he answered. She tilted her head. "So I guess we saved each other?" "I guess we did." In the weeks that followed, Eli started school again. Private tutors helped him catch up. A doctor checked his health. He began to gain weight, and the dark circles under his eyes faded. But more than that, he began to really smile. At school, some kids recognized him from the viral story. At first, he felt embarrassed, but one of them came up and said, "That thing you did? It was cool." Another added, "Not many people would have done what you did." He didn't care about being popular. He only cared about doing better than before. At home, the girl treated him like her brother. They shared jokes, music, and stories. She taught him how to read Braille, and he described the world to her in colors and shapes she couldn't see anymore. Sometimes, they just sat in silence and let it be enough. One afternoon, her father gave Eli a letter. "What's this?" Eli asked. "Open it," he smiled. Inside was a scholarship letter from a major education trust, funded by the family's own foundation. "For college?" Eli asked, stunned. "For anything you want to do," the man said. "Your story inspired others. People want to help now because you helped first." Eli stared at the letter, trying to hold back tears again. "Do I deserve this?" he asked softly. The man put a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't ask for any of it. You gave your heart when no one was watching. That's why it came back to you." Months later, a small news channel revisited the story with a follow-up. This time, they didn't just talk about a lost girl and a homeless teen. They talked about a young man with a future, about second chances, and about the power of one simple act of kindness. When the interviewer asked Eli, "What made you stop and help her that night?" he thought for a second and said, "Because I knew what it felt like to be lost. And I didn't want her to feel that way too." And that was all the answer the world needed.